Right now, on the other side, we've got the Tech Talk from technology to business innovation with unified cloud experience. We're looking at talking about, do organizations really have an aligned cloud strategy? Make sure that the organization is not mistaking the cloud implementation plan to a cloud strategy. Why connected cloud ecosystem and application modernization will top the cloud agenda, and how a unified cloud approach, bringing different elements like cloud infra, cloud security, network management, can create a true cloud strategy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we are joined by our eminent speaker, Sridhar S., Vice President, Managed Services, Cloud, Hosting and Security, Tata Communications Limited. Well, Sridhar is a technology veteran with 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. He's held several leadership positions and roles in blue chip companies such as Dell, IBM, Intel, and HCL, and has also served in India, Asia, and US markets throughout his career. Thank you so much, Sridhar, for joining us. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be in front of all of you this morning to share some views regarding the cloud transformation that we're all going through. But right at the beginning, with a hope and prayer that all of you are safe and fine and very healthy despite the current challenges that we face all around us. Let's hope we get over this very fast. Over the next 15 odd minutes, let me try and talk you through what is happening with this cloud transformation. Why is a unified and a uniform cloud experience important? And what can we do potentially to leverage this, the resources available better and build a better plan as we go ahead into the future? And for that, let me begin by stating the obvious. It's very, very clear that today, cloud is becoming a biggest business improvement machine. The innovations that you can bring about in your business model, particularly so in the last 14, 15 months that we have realized, has come to prove that all these are important as we go ahead into the future, because we need to be present everywhere and we need to be present close to the customer. Imagine a medium such as this existed even before, but the way we are utilizing it today and the way we are engaged with you right now in being able to disseminate some of our thoughts are a clear example as to how a business model is constantly being reinvented. So as you begin to create this kind of a business model for your organization, the first question that is being asked is that, do you have a comprehensive cloud strategy? Why do we ask that? It's because it's beyond just having a simple cloud implementation plan. By cloud strategy, what we would like to convey is that it's an identification of the role that a cloud can perform for the organization. By this, what we mean is that you define the business baselines. You're clear about what you want to accomplish from the cloud. Let's look at the what and the how of preparing this kind of a plan. There is a business baseline that you establish. Then you define which are all the areas that you can work on with an innovative business model leveraging the cloud. Once you utilize that, you decide what is the kind of services strategy that you would want to be able to deliver these to the different departments, to the different functions, to the different parts of the ecosystem that you're engaged with, in a manner in which you can stay connected and you can share the resources and derive best productivity given the circumstances. So once you define the services strategy, then you start to build on what are all the kind of financial models. So here the operative point is, it's not just about converting CapEx into OpEx. I think we have well past that stage. Looking at what is it going to derive in terms of savings, in terms of the business parameters, that is becoming more important. For example, am I able to shrink my bills receivables time? Am I able to reduce my just-in-time inventory? What can I do to ensure that the number of people that I add are able to bring me the best outcomes under the circumstances? So the parameters with which you define a critical outcome have changed with this kind of a methodology. So looking at these kind of financial models, putting the entire framework under a very strong and comprehensive security strategy becomes the what of making the plan. And you think about the how, the first point that you have to look at is the inventory. It includes both your physical inventory as well as your application inventory. The physical inventory, you're going to look through what are all the kind of infrastructure purchases that you've made, what is in your possession, in your data center, co-located somewhere, hosted somewhere, and in the diverse IT estate that you have, how are you going to migrate them to the cloud? And then you look at the application inventory, and suddenly you realize there is a set of applications which are conveniently resident in your data center, and they're in a fairly stable and predictable environment. The question to be asked is, do we really need to move it to the cloud for the compulsion of moving to the cloud? Or is it comfortably there? What are all the kind of resources of the cloud that this application is going to use? So for certain stable workloads, certain predictable workloads, it's probably better off that you retain them where they are. Whereas if it is like the typically talked about e-commerce websites and the big billion days and what have you, those kind of websites will need rapid increase in terms of the resources that you would need at certain spike moments and at certain trough moments. So for them, the unpredictability and the vagaries of the business are going to demand differentiated resources. So the critical point to imagine and examine is which are the applications which would require this kind of an infrastructure shift. And then you decide about the application movement roadmap. And thereafter comes the question stating, if these are the kind of applications, if this is what I want to do, what do the applications demand? For a banking organization, for example, a latency in the performance could mean a lot. A stockbroking company, for example, can afford no latency. So how am I going to have the network redesign? Or some application would require an always on in terms of access mechanisms. So how am I going to maintain that kind of an infrastructure? So a network redesign comes into play. And then comes the variety of allied areas, which talks about the skills, the resources, maybe even the challenges of technology obsolescence of the hardware that you purchased or the lifetime that you still have. So all these points come into play. And finally, with all this, it's very, very important. And look at the third pillar here. It's very important to have an exit plan. With any such implementation, it is important for us to create the markers and the kind of milestones that we want to accomplish in terms of how this is going to be delivered. And if in the event something does not happen, or if in the event there are certain issues with respect to, let's say, lock-in in terms of infrastructure, in terms of licenses, in terms of presence on the cloud, if such kind of a lock-in is going to be there, which does not benefit the organization, probably it's time to call it off. There's nothing wrong in staying away, because we have seen various workloads being repatriated back into the data centers, and that's not a new phenomenon. I get to hear that that's happening in several parts of the globe already. So this, we believe, is a very, very important necessity at this point of time to look at a very, very organized cloud strategy. And why am I emphasizing on this? A Gartner white paper in the year 2019 said nearly 30% of the organizations only have some sort of a cloud strategy. Others are just having an implementation plan. But they predicted by 2022 end, 70% of the organizations will have an organized cloud strategy. So I would like to see that all of you in this room become part of the 70 and not part of the 30. That's the reason why we're emphasizing on having this kind of a coherent cloud strategy. By the way, many of these applications and softwares which are leveraged off the cloud, from being a cloud first or a cloud migrated application, today, many of them are available only on a cloud only environment. That means the migration has already started, and how you leverage it matters. And then the outcome of all this is what you see in the last block. How are you going to provide a uniform cloud experience to all the users, which could be internal users as well as an ecosystem of users? So what are you going to measure yourself on? It's not around what is the kind of technology or the kind of new age infrastructure requirements. None of it. It's about growth, what you deliver. It's about the efficiency that you derive from the infrastructure. It's about the overall usage experience. What is the kind of organizational as well as infrastructural agility that you provide? And finally, how do you bring innovation to play as an outcome? And look at the right side of the chart. These are all the resources available to you. And we've all been reading about how a blockchain is helping, for example, international remittances in the banking industry. We are talking a lot in the context of the pandemic today. Healthcare industry is looking at leveraging blockchain a lot more, because they believe in maintaining the contiguity of patient information and access available across the various resources. Retail industry is talking about AI and ML to provide Uber experiences to all the retail consumers. So that is one set of usage models. Another is with respect to IoT in factory floor, in terms of physical inventory management, in terms of stock taking. With IoT, there's so much of data that is going to be loaded into your infrastructure. So how would you capture the data? How are you going to analyze them? How are you going to build insights on them? How are you going to deliver the outcomes from that? Becomes very, very important in real-time situations. Edge computing, how are you going to take the applications closer to the point of usage? How are you going to create this kind of an infrastructure where you are able to deliver it from these kind of edge networking resources? So these are all becoming very, very important in your overall context. So there are the tools which you see on the right side of the chart, and on the left side are going to be your measures. Far from talking specifics of technology in terms of a particular parameter. This is a IDC prediction. They said that for 2021, IDC says a connected cloud ecosystem and application modernization are going to be of paramount importance. And this is the most important agenda for most CIOs in the country today. And look at this, you see 2023, 24, and 25 mentioned in the respective pillars. In 2023, they're talking about struggling with app modernization. Struggling is probably a very, I would say, a tough word to use. But the fact remains that in a serverless, and a containerized kind of an environment, which applications are ready, which applications can be refactored, how can you move the application lock, stock, and barrel to be able to monitor and manage from a cloud environment? How am I going to provide the user experience? Once again, it all boils down to the user experience. Then it talks about how the 50% of the enterprises will replace outdated operational models, which means the operational environment is completely going to change, not just for yourselves, but various applications are going to be available on the cloud, as well as the ecosystem of partnerships that you've created, the extended organization, the supply chain ecosystem, for example, the downstream outreach ecosystem, for example, will need to leverage these resources. So how do you enable collaboration across this entire ecosystem is going to be of very high level of importance. So suffice to say that the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to be busy in redesigning this whole application infrastructure to deliver what is being talked about here as a connected cloud ecosystem to deliver the unified cloud experience. And so what are the challenges that you would face in enabling this? The first one clearly is a very, very disruptive migration. Right, and I was talking to a CIO who was in an organization that has got a wide range of businesses which are looking at investing for innovative business models. And when he was talking to me, he said, "I wear a de bono hat when I go to each one of them. I talk to them as their business owner." Clearly, that said that you've got to think, the CIO has to think the business model of that particular user. And by doing this, what he did was effectively ensured that he gives the idea and the business funds it. And by doing that, he mentioned very, very clearly that the challenge of being able to manage the change and the internal resistance that the organization is going to face because of a change of a disruptive business model rests on the business and not on IT. Various organizations, I find, have this kind of a baggage where IT ends up educating people and it becomes IT's problem to go and solve the business challenges or the business resistances that come into play. And I thought that this CIO's feedback to me, and this was about 3 years back, I thought it was a very, very profound feedback. So that's point number one. Point number two, how do you manage these disparate cloud instances? As you begin to create your presence on the cloud and you begin to take some off-the-shelf applications in a SaaS format, or you begin to leverage certain platforms across the cloud, clearly managing such kind of a disparate environment across this multi-cloud estate, diverse IT estate, becomes an important challenge. What tools and resources do you use becomes of key consideration. And everyone talks about a single pane of glass. Ultimately, you have multiple single panes of glass to deliver one single output to you. So first, how do you make that work? Third, security in a cloud-first environment, and I have a few slides subsequently. Security is very, very important in this particular context because you might have all seen the Gartner white paper, which said identity is the new perimeter. Now, there is no physical perimeter for the organization's infrastructure. Every point from where you begin the access becomes the new perimeter, and that point not just becomes the new perimeter, becomes the new vulnerability. The next challenge is always technology is ahead and skills are going to play catch up. Just that some of us in this service provider industry, we are better positioned because we can attract talent. And since we hire them in high numbers, naturally there builds an internal buffer there compared to what you as a user organization can do. But make no mistake, skills are always going to play catch up with technology. Lastly, procurement inefficiencies, because many a time, and this relates back to what we talked about in the context of cloud strategy, when you have a cloud implementation plan, you make point in time decisions. When you have a cloud strategy, you have a coherent methodology as to how you're going to approach this and what are your milestones at which you're going to keep augmenting and adding these resources, and how would you have a smooth, neat and organized procurement strategy towards these. So these are the key challenges around the migration towards the cloud and the potential areas of impact that can create for your overall organizational IT design. And this is one slide which doesn't need too much of an explanation to you. What you see here are a bunch of challenges that you would face, the issues that you that you probably grapple with on a day-to-day basis. But from here, I'll pick 4 themes. There are just 4 areas that CIOs and CISOs have to grapple with. First one is the identity. Is there a uniform single source of truth where you're able to identify every user and allow them access into the system? And how would you regulate the kind of access that they would have to the different resources? So the first one is identity. In identity and access management, having an active directory, having a single source of truth is important. Next is the user endpoint device. Which is the device? How is it going to access? How are you going to keep it secure? How do you ensure that that adheres to, because in your bring your own BYOD world, one of the CIOs mentioned to me that YOD is not bring your own device, it's bring your own difficulties as well. Suffice to say that each one becomes a point of challenge, and managing the endpoint from a security perspective also becomes extremely challenging. Third one is about applications. We've been speaking about applications all this while, about how you want to provide the unified experience and a uniform internal as well as the external user experience. And the last one, data. While everybody talks about the cliched data is the new oil, more important is to look at the data from a compliance perspective, data residency perspective. Where do you want to have your data reside? How do you want to have the archival mechanism? How do you want to regulate the access and comply with the laws of the land, whether it is a GDPR, whether it is a PDP bill in India or any other country's guidelines as they may be. So these, I would try and cluster them into these 3-4 areas as a primary wall of challenges. This is very, very important, and I would like all of you to spend a few minutes to probably just stare at this, because there are multiple colors here. What I'm trying to impact here is, it is not just somebody's responsibility tomorrow. You have handed over to someone, it is gone. Or let me take this as an example. Inside your organization, you've got an IT department, you've got an information security department. Just because there is an information security department, it doesn't mean that a user is absolved of his or her responsibility in adhering to the guidelines. A leakage, you're as strong as your weakest link. And any adherence issue by one user, if the router at my home today is probably not able to adhere to the protocols defined by the company, I create a vulnerability not just for my PC, but for my entire organization. Likewise, even if you hand over certain responsibilities to the service provider, they only provide the right kind of solution and security framework that is applicable to their application environment. Whether that meets your guidelines or not, or what additional safeguards that you need to provide. For example, you might be using Office 365. Office 365 might throw a bunch of logs at you, but how are those logs being integrated into your security operations system, and how are they being monitored is entirely your responsibility. So what we've done here is to break this responsibility down by that of the user in the first block, as you see here. The second block shows the service provider's responsibility. The third block is the service provider feature or a customer configuration that they would provide you. And the last point here is 100% with the service provider. So a physical security of a cloud infrastructure obviously is that of the service provider. Whereas the application level control is something that needs to be defined completely by the user. So that is why the point is maintained here with infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service, in terms of just trying to show you what is the gradient of the level of shared responsibility. So as Tata Communications, what can we do? We help enterprises operationalize your cloud strategy. In what way? First one, migration. We go through it with a very, very comprehensive cloud assessment process. We look at which are the applications that are ready, which are the applications that need mild refactorization, or which are the applications that would probably need a completely different cloud native design. Helping you in structuring this kind of a migration strategy, leveraging the right kind of tools, understanding the workload impact. What if there is an application vendor that is participating in your infrastructural requirements, working with them in such kind of a refactoring or retiring or restructuring mechanism, working with them to get you this migration strategy in a strong outcome-oriented manner is the first step that we do. Second is, we talked about data residency, integrating the various data sources, structuring your data lake and your data repositories wherever they are, and helping with the right kind of storage and archival mechanism, the overall data strategy in a very, very compliant format with respect to the laws of the land is another important area. The third one, I talked about security, a comprehensive security strategy for the cloud across all the parameters we spoke about, which is the identity, the device, data, and application, and ensuring that the network network that is capable of, that is going to provide you this infrastructure? Have you protected your network? And how have we helped you forget your perimeter? Next, keeping compliance. I talked about it in each of the contexts, giving you the right kind of compliance framework. It could be the generic compliances with respect to data, for example, as we spoke about, or it could be specific ones with respect to the industry on demand, whether it's a PCI DSS or a HIPAA compliance or anything that is there to the respective industries. Giving you the right network strategy. I talked about network from a latency, from a performance impact, from an always on requirement. And cloud first is necessitating a complete redesign of the network, because from a point-to-point linkage and a multiple mesh network kind of an architecture, we are moving to internet and probably broadband. That means you are moving to a completely different design. You could stretch your wide area network. It could be an SD-WAN. You could create a complete new design with internet lease lines, or either which way, you will need to look at security as well as part of this. So from a vantage point where we sit, looking at a network, looking at cloud, and looking at security, and beyond all of that, you will need to use a lot of tools, be it for collaboration or any of the others, because mediums such as these, whether it is a Zoom or a Teams or a WebEx or any of them, structuring that kind of a collaboration framework, leveraging all this requires an understanding. And a provider like Tata, we have the capability across all these areas and all these parameters come into play while designing the solution for you. And lastly, a very, very coherent procurement strategy. Where do you invest? Are you investing in the right resources, helping you procure or helping you define what needs to be procured in what manner? We could help you in that also in the overall construct of the solution. Here is a report that IDC prepared for us after interviewing some of our customers, and we looked at the parameters that you see on the left side of the chart. The parameters around reduced IT infrastructure cost, capex deferment, opex reduction, agility, performance, resource efficiency, and business productivity. I want to point out a few elements here. Faster time to deploy new compute resources at 89.5% improvement. Staff time to deploy improved by 94.8%. Unplanned downtime incidents reduced by 94.8%. Resource effectiveness, improvement in efficiency by 72.8%. And these are not numbers that we cooked up. This was done by a comprehensive study that IDC did on various customers of ours who were willing to be quoted and who were willing to work with such kind of a measurement. And I thought this was probably a good point for me to share with you, where we could show you how we have impacted the IT design performance and hence an overall business outcome in completely measurable, tangible format. And these are exactly what the customer said. A health insurance provider has said freeing up of IT staff resulted in concentrating more on application support issues. So we removed some of the mundane tasks from that, which enabled them to focus on more serious issues. A retailer said it was more important facility management projects and IoT related solutions that they were evaluating at that point of time. I talked about the physical inventory management, stock taking, etc. They were able to focus on that. IT service provider, they said unplanned downtimes came down significantly because of this. So this is real customer feedback based on what we've been able to deliver to them. So at this point, I just want to give you one slide which talks about the entire portfolio. I've been speaking about it in various parts during the course of the last 15 minutes. Network at the bottom layer, infrastructure in any form or fashion across any of the public cloud or private cloud providers, giving you the entire security. And we also have the right kind of tools to be able to measure your cloud security posture management, because misconfigurations, wrong configurations is a very, very important here and now problem today. So you need to have continuous monitoring, and we need to provide you the visibility, the governance, and the compliance for each one of these. So cloud security posture management is important. And then we've expanded our professional services across multiple areas, not just in infrastructure management. We also have a comprehensive SAP COE with which we provide designs. And some of the largest SAP HANA installations in the country are on our grid and our solution framework with our COE's involvement. We also have capabilities around building data platforms and data lakes, as I spoke about in a different part of the presentation. And we're also developing capabilities and have certain proof points around application modernization efforts and providing CI/CD solutions to customers. And all of this capped with a comprehensive, ongoing managed services capability, which now we've also been CMM level 3 certified. So we have the right kind of people. We have our back office operations center in Chennai with a with a BCP center in Pune, with about 300 plus certified engineers across cloud and security. And these are in 2 different seismic zones, completely different infrastructure. So we have built the right kind of business practices and the proven processes. Nearly 30% of the world's internet passes through our pipes, and we have the right kind of exposure and relationships with global industry players who work on these kind of inputs. So getting these inputs and providing from our scrubbing farms, looking at the kind of malicious data, etc., we provide the right kind of cloud and security solutions to customers, which is, like I said, bottoms up, secured by design. And lastly, with a comprehensive global security framework, we are able to provide you secure global connectivity, which delivers you top class performance. And for being able to deliver this with the support and acceptance and appreciation from customers such as yourselves, we've been able to bag a lot of these awards from industry leaders such as Gartner, Frost & Sullivan, VMware Cloud Provider Awards, as well as an Economic Times Award, which we won later part of last year for being the best enterprise managed security services provider. So with this, I come to the end of the presentation. I do hope I've been able to give you something that is useful for you to just set your thought process going. We are there, the first phone call to the nearest Datacom representative. We are always there to support you. We will deliver you a cloud which is assured and a cloud which is secure. With that, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you.